얘들아 승용보 올려라. Look at now. Hey, TFT 모바일 도동동자 또로로로 갤럭시 푸동동자. Hey, TFT 모바일 도동동자 또로로로 갤럭시 푸동동자. 또 떨어져 허구와 날라다타. 여기 갤럭시 너의 자식 얼럭키다. 너의 두뇌 그래서 타지 않아. 21세기 네 전략 이제 전략 능지 차이 나는 널 능지 처참히 롤 아재 롤린 이돌 롤린 인더들 자 이제 누나 막아 담아 회전 초밥 뒤집개로 뒤집어라 레디 셋 에이 TFT 모바일 도동동자 또로로로 갤럭시 푸동동자 에이 TFT 모바일 도동동자 또로로로 갤럭시 푸동동자 라이어가 멋이 도동동자 에이 TFT 모바일 푸동동자 에이 온유월 서리 가득 찰롯동자 또로로로 갤럭시 푸동동자 하다 현타 푸동동자 TFT 갤럭시 푸동동자 유체 뉴 시너지 전설전자 멋이 패치 우주 푸동동자 리그 오브 레전드 전략 게임 TFT 모바일 푸동동자.
All right. Okay. Clap. LS.
Yeah.
Hey. I didn't really hear it, but I think that's a good enough clap.
Yeah, it's totally fun.
Now. All right, welcome guys to episode 8 of the Pog State. This is the first one that we've done without any real League of Legends in between. So there's actually no video game to discuss here, but we're still excited about it. EU Masters has been happening. It was when I was asleep, so maybe someone has watched that. There's been some definitely interesting stuff that's happened to Twitter based on that. Apparently everyone's a giant arms Polish 80 carry at this point in time on Twitter, but maybe that has changed in the 3 days time that it will take for this to actually come out. But I'm Atlus. I am joined, of course, by LS, and we have special guest Nemesis joining us on today's show. But first, before you get your Fnatic mid laner fix, we do need to go through the disclaimer as per usual. Of course, this does not represent the views and opinions of Riot Korea, nor does it represent the views and opinions of Fnatic, or my parents, or LS's parents, or anyone's parents, actually. It's just us. We're not parents. You're not a dad, are you, LS?
I'm not.
No?
That I'm aware of.
You just run an orphanage.
See, I have the save right there, you know?
Yeah, that's your general mood. And
yeah.
LS, you've been doing some interesting things over this week. I've been watching hours and hours and hours of LS content talking about solo queue, and I don't know whether I can handle it too much more, but do you know what we're going to do? We're probably going to talk about it in today's episode. But how's your week been?
I did those 3 talk show thingies.
Yeah.
I did the one with Dominate, Whippo, and Malice. I did the one with Hotshot and Voyboy, and then I just did a standalone one. So that was pretty much it. And then there was the Volibear thing that came out, so I guess I did like a mini content thing
I had
there.
a look at that one.
Yeah.
How you feeling about Volibear after you recorded the video? I know you recorded it after like it was out for 2 minutes or something like that. So have you had any extra thoughts?
I think the rework is a success. I think it's just going to come down to the numbers. I think no matter what, his new E and his new R allows him to be more relevant than the old Volibear ever could hope to be without getting massively ahead or relying on other champions in the game in order to make him successful.
Yeah, I actually think it's really cool that Omrek is back in the game. I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
We do need to address one other thing, though, guys, and that is the winner of the Pog State Award. This was thanks to you guys and your votes over on Twitter, so thank you so much for that one. And it was Teddy in a landslide, 55% of the votes, and so Teddy is going to be our first Pog State Award winner. So congratulations to Teddy. Well-deserved, fantastic finals performance, and I feel like we've been vindicated from Teddy missing out on finals MVP. So absolutely brilliant stuff. Congratulations to Teddy. We'll see whether we can actually get something out to him. Not sure whether that can happen, but maybe, just maybe, we'll have some guests on in the future that might be able to deliver something like that to Teddy. But that's just a little bit of a winky there, and we'll see whether we can actually get that one working out. So yeah, today's episode is going to be an interesting one because this is mainly about ULS having a conversation with Nemesis about what the heck is going on with not only what you were discussing in some of your podcasts, which is like stagnation of coaching style. I actually thought that your conversation with Bwipo about this was really, really interesting, because I think that Bwipo was one of the people, like, you and Hotshot just tended to agree with each other the entire podcast.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what we got out of that, because I already knew your opinion and his was the same. But I think Bwipo really raised some interesting points on that one. So it'll be really great to be able to talk to Nemesis about this as well. And also, you know, about solo queue and Voyboy's crazy pop-off video. I couldn't believe it. Voyboy saying something negative. I don't know. That's when you know we're going through some dark times, when Voyboy starts saying negative things. And so I think that we need to address that just a little bit as well, although it's not necessarily as relevant. It's just that I think all the time there has been this like view of Korean solo queue as being sort of like the most competitive variety. And I want to know your opinion, LS, on whether Korea is different enough to save it from all of these problems, or whether they're still happening. Because I know that, you know, I've had my fair share of griefers in game, and I know Brennan Valdez has been tweeting about it incessantly for like the past month.
I would almost actually feel uncomfortable to talk about it on a Riot produced side content, but I guess I guess
this does not represent the opinions of Riot Korea or Riot Games. Don't you worry, or anyone's parents. You won't have to answer to anyone.
The griefers, the people that just run it down immediately after dying, and I think it gets really, really, really unbearable once you start getting into D2, D1, Master, Grandmaster. I think that's when it starts to get really gross. Because you have a lot of win traders there as well, because of the MMR. You have a lot of players that buy accounts at that MMR, people that raise accounts up to that point and then sell them off, and then you get the autofill, or you get the platinum player that has a rich bank account, and then he starts to run it down. Obviously, people would raise the argument that if you're not the griefer or the troll, statistically the opposing team is more likely to have one. But that's still just not an enjoyable game. It's not enjoyable when the game is over for either team at like 10 minutes. I think Korea has been a bit of a cesspool for, I would say, the last 18 months, at least in my memory. I think it got really bad after the initial rank blunder, when the ladder became a mess and everyone was talking about it.
Yeah,
I think that was one of the starting downfalls. I know that a lot of Korean pro players are very upset with the ladder right now in general. I know that there's a lot of stuff that's been going on, and it feels like everything has gotten a lot more vocal. As you mentioned about Brendan, he has that like the tweet chain where he just keeps uploading videos of him getting inted or griefed in Korean solo queue, and I don't think that it's only a Korean thing. I actually don't mind the Korean toxicity thing. I've never been someone to mind telling me that like I should die or like I should jump off a bridge or anything like that. I just, you can mute that. What you can't mute is someone going AFK in a brush at level 3.
Yeah.
Or just getting mobility boots and running it down. Or, you know, just soft-inting you, like not using their abilities but still playing, because the system can't detect it. There's nothing you can do about that. I have no problem if someone tells me that they're going to nuke my house, as long as they are still trying in the game.
Well, the thing is, like, that means that they care, right? If they're yelling at you and they're getting upset, that means that they care about winning the game. And you're probably like, oh, okay, yeah, thank you so much for that awful insult. Please, God, never say that again. But I'm really glad that you have a positive attitude towards winning the game. That's fantastic. Nicely done.
That's it.
We certainly do not. I know that this isn't, you know, we had the disclaimer. I did it twice, but also we don't condone toxicity. Please don't be toxic. That's awful. But if you're going to, at least keep trying, because then we can mute you and then everything's going to be fine. So I actually think that, like, you raise a very good point. And I think that this is something that you've discussed with others at length as well. And it's not about, like, whether or not you're yelling at someone and making them feel bad. It's about whether you're intentionally trying to lose the game. Yeah. And that's bad for everyone forever. I think that's
because it makes the winning team. So eventually what ends up happening is queuing up even if you win, it doesn't feel good because the win doesn't feel like it just feels like, wow, the enemy team had the guy that went mental boom at 10 minutes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So your win is just sort of like dragged out 20 minutes, but you know that you're going to win. You just have such an insurmountable gold lead, or the opponent's just softenting and they don't care. It doesn't feel good. But when it's happening to you, there's nothing, you can't do anything. There's no way to mute that behavior. There's no way to mute that play. And so,
I mean, that's like 40 minutes of your life down the drain without you being able to do anything
with the
about
Q
it.
timer included, right? So it takes away the satisfaction from actually playing out a game and winning because it's not real. It doesn't feel legitimate. And then when you're losing with it, it just feels like, please just pour salt into my eye. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. No, it's not good, and hopefully there can be some sort of fix about it. I know Riot did respond to Voy Boy, but it wasn't with any actual solution. It's like, we can hear you, and to be perfectly honest, that doesn't really say very much.
No, there was the post by Medler.
Oh, did Medler come out with another one?
Yeah, there was actually a really big response. It was #1 Reddit. You might be able to find that. Yeah. So Riot did basically put the gears in motion, it seems, towards trying to get something going that's going to better detect like griefing. Now I don't know how they're going to go about it. And then the other thing is in like the feedback report, I think it's going to give it out like more often to everyone, like so that your reports feel more meaningful. I don't know what that does. Obviously, that helps because it doesn't feel like your reports are just going into a void. Yeah,
and that's the biggest problem, right? It's like people that get the same grief is in their game all day and nothing actually happens, and they get reported every single time. Like that's where things become an issue. So I'm glad that there are things in place, and we'll just have to see whether they actually work out. Because the fact that things have gotten so much worse over the last, 18 months, but even also in the last 6 months, I think that Dom was talking about things really escalating quite recently.
Yes.
If that can be nipped in the bud and we can just go back to the good old days, then things could be better. I think coronavirus may have actually impacted this as well, because there'd be a lot of people with a lot of time on their hands that are probably a bit frustrated and stuck at home. Yeah. And that might be another thing that's adding to it. But let's move forward. Let's invite good old Nemesis into this chat and see whether he can actually join us or not. Welcome, Nemesis, to the Pog State. If you don't know him, you've been living under a rock, ladies and gentlemen. This is the mid laner for Fnatic, one side of the greatest rivalry in League of Legends history, which is what I learnt just before the LEC final, which we're not going to go into because we want Nemesis to stick around. He's also known as one of the greatest Yasuo players of all time, and the one to also help good old LS move his career forward. So great to have you on the show, dude. Welcome. And LS is losing his mind.
Hello.
What have you been doing in the off season?
I've been playing a lot of solo queue. I've been playing a lot of duo queue with Malice because he's in Europe now, and I've been grinding my accounts to like high challenger.
Nice. Have you been suffering a lot of the issues that we've been going over a lot this week? How's your solo queue experience been?
My solo queue experience has been like kind of same as always. I haven't like noticed any changes, right? But I mean, people started complaining now, but to be honest, I've felt these issues already, like I don't know, probably even last year already, or even like a year, maybe 2 years ago. So I'm already used to them, and I'm not complaining about them that much.
All right, so it's sort of like it's just same old and just been continuing basically the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit similarly, but I'm glad that at least the issue is being spoken about. But Nemesis, you and good old LS have been friends for quite some time now. Do you want to let us know when you first got to know good old Last Shadow over there?
I I don't know exactly when I got to know him, because I've known him for like many years now, because he's been in the scene for a long time and he's been streaming in the past, and I'm pretty sure I watched a lot of his like streams over years and stuff with my brother and stuff. But I started talking to him more and more last year before Worlds, I believe. Because I feel like we had a lot of similar ideas on how the game should be played and how, they're just in general about this game.
Didn't you do an OPGG donation?
Yeah,
a long time ago.
Yes, I
did. Can you guys explain what that is about?
So LS has like. For viewers, they can donate $10 and then you link them your OPGG and then he reviews it. And I basically, in season 6, I donated $10 or whatever it is for an OPGG donation, and I told him that I'm like top, like I don't know, high challenger player, and that how do I get better and stuff. And basically, what I remember from is he wasn't like positive towards me. He was actually quite negative. He was like, I don't know who you can be because the things you're doing are really bad and stuff. Like he's been flaming my trinket usage, that I'm not swapping, for example, to blue trinkets. And then he told me that Aurelion Sol is an OP champ that no one plays, that Fly from Korea. He's playing it and he's like owning everyone, and that I have to pick him up and I should play him. And then I started playing Aurelion Sol, and immediately after that I reached like top 10 in EU.
Damn. So LS, you are good at your job.
No. I'm good at scamming. All right? Like,
Le scammer. He wins again.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm just going to assume that you're humble, and actually, we just have a successful coach of now one of the greatest mid laners in Europe. I know we're not. I promised that we weren't going to talk about the final and things like that, but congratulations for coming second anyway. In the LEC, like this is absolutely huge. Also, congratulations on how well you've been doing on Fnatic as well. Like, was it difficult joining Fnatic when it was such a storied org? I mean, I know you played for Mad Lions beforehand, but that was only for like 6 months to a year or something like that, right?
I believe it was over a year, if I remember, a bit over a year. But I think joining Fnatic was very easy for a person like me, because I don't care about the thing called pressure nowadays in esports and stuff. Like for me, that doesn't affect me, and I didn't I expected just like it was, so I didn't have any issues and stuff. I feel like some things that were in Spain that I was there were harder than here, so. Yeah.
Wow, that's actually really impressive. I imagine that a lot of people would actually struggle with the pressure. I feel like we have a few LCK examples of players, and we like to refer to them as having robot mentalities. And we know at the moment that you're not a robot, but we'll see whether we can dig to the truth later in the podcast. I also want to say a huge thanks for actually coming on the show, because it hasn't been a thing that you've really done all that often. You don't really like to do interviews and that sort of stuff. Is there a reason for that? Do you just not see the point?
It's not that I don't like doing them. I sometimes just don't think they're good, or I don't see the point of doing them. Sometimes that's why I don't do them as much. But thanks to LS, I'm here. He wrote me a message. I have to be here, and I can't say no. So here I am.
So you didn't actually. We coerced Nemesis to be on this show tonight. He didn't actually know. He thought he was just going to hang out with his mate, and that didn't end up happening. So cheers, LS. We may have lost you a friend, but at least we got a cool guest on the Pog State. So that's worth it, right?
There we go. Yeah. That's exactly it.
Absolutely wonderful. Were you following Nemesis? Were you following much of LS's conversation about coaching and the stagnation that we haven't necessarily proven just yet, but we will go into? Have you been following that conversation at all?
Yeah. So I haven't watched entire his discussion that he had. I didn't watch entirely of it, but I talk to him a lot privately, and I know like the things that he thinks about the scene, and I'm sure he knows the things that I think about the scene and stuff. So I am well aware of what he's saying, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. What do you think some of the issues are? Do you mind talking about it?
I'm really bad at this. How do I don't know where do I start?
Ellis hasn't taught you? He's really good at turning those negatives into positives.
I'm unfiltered, Atlus. He's gonna, he's gonna be really careful here.
No, I am really bad at explaining stuff, but I know. How do I explain this? I know how it is in my mind, but I'm bad at explaining it.
That's all right. You can take your time. We got plenty of time, man.
I guess one of the issues that he was saying was that the coaches can't grapple with the players, right? Because they don't have the necessary knowledge because most of the coaches, they weren't even professional players, and even if they are, that doesn't mean they have the knowledge necessary to be on the high level right now, because most of the information that the coach gets is just fed by the players, right? And for example, me myself, I don't ever expect my coach to know more than what the players know, because the players are the ones playing the game on every day, right? And coaches just get information from them. So yeah, one of Alice's things that he talked about was that coaches can grapple with like players about things, right? Which I believe is true for sure. I've experienced it many times, even though I didn't have many coaches. But I've also heard things from other teams and stuff, and I do think that's, for example, true.
Yeah, and I actually want to ask you a question about this as well, LS. Like, do you think that is why we're not seeing as much leveling up as far like strategically in League of Legends that we might want to see, based on years in the past? Like this stagnation that we're talking about. Do you think that's because of coaches not necessarily being good enough at the game?
I think a lot of it stems from a lot of things. I think I'm trying to think of a way that I can say this in a safe manner without having to go too deep, right? Because
I think we threw out too many eggshells. There's too many eggshells for you guys to walk on.
It's a little bit scary for me to answer, because I know that any comment that I make, if I don't go long-winded, then it doesn't. There's not a defense. So it's a little bit weird, especially because I feel like I'm one of the faces of this argument right now that exists in the entire like Western LoL scene, right? So generally when people become coaches, even if they were pro players before, they no longer play the game the way that they used to. And so there's a bit of detachment that ends up happening. I mean, I'm experiencing it myself right now because I didn't touch solo queue for like 2 months. I played it a little bit like a week ago, but I'm very angry at myself right now. Like there's something different that's not connecting when I watch the game, or when I like just sit on someone's channel, or when I like co-stream or live view, like any of the leagues right now. I feel very disconnected. So I can't imagine what it's like to either almost never play the game or play it super infrequently and just taper off completely. So I think that something happens there. Another thing is that if someone can't grapple with the professional player, then there's a disconnect there as too, because I think we're being really dishonest with how difficult it is to grapple. And there's been a lot of community or player figureheads that have been pretty outspoken about this. There was the Shy interview that ended up on Reddit, where the Shy basically said a similar thing, that the coach ideally shouldn't be as good as a pro player. It doesn't have to be, but they should be able to grapple with the pro player. And the definition of grapple is, can you get lane states or spots or game states to be within benefit of the doubt? Like if the mechanics were there, or if the mechanics were a little bit better, then this is a winning situation. Can you accurately showcase this? Dopa or Apto has been. Can we talk about him? So I know Apto's been outspoken about it. I know CV Max has spoken about it. I know that some of the most strategically diverse coaches that we have in the LCK, as well as even in the LPL, are actually higher MMR. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that is pretty important. And I think that stagnation occurs when the coach, like what Nemesis is talking about, when I've talked about, I mean, I talked about it with Double Lift too. Double Lift even had a clip that got the very top of Reddit where Double Lift's take on like what a coach should ideally be able to do. It's very rare to find someone like that. To find someone that can grapple with pro players or actually goes in and researches like all 5 roles and can go into arguments and, you know, play devil's advocate against the entire team, you know, without like letting certain biases occur or whatnot. Whereas if the majority of your information and input is coming from the players, then you have a very limited range of options that you can really do in a conversation, and you end up becoming a facilitator rather than someone that can actually lead or guide direction or conversation. And you try to basically make it so that the players all interact harmoniously.
It's
that
actually
was
really hard.
long-winded, but I think I had to do
no,
it.
I think you've nailed it. I think you've nailed it. And it's basically what you're saying is like it's good if the coach can actually get in the ring and show someone how to throw a punch, for example.
Within reason, yeah.
Yeah.
Might not
and
be able to actually beat the player, but within reason. But also, there's different types of coaches. There's strategical. There's like life coaching, which I think some people lump in with like management type coaching, like managing personalities, managing conversations, etc. There's different ones. If we're ever going to give someone the title strategical coach, I think that they should be able to, within reason, get to that level. And I think that we'll start to see that in coming years, where elite players begin to retire and maybe they move into coaching positions or something like that. I think that that's going to be a direction. And I know that a lot of high MMR players who are wanting to get into coaching, challenger level on EUS, North America, etc., are starting to go down this route of like playing Phil and trying to go into analytical stuff and EDU stuff and whatnot. So maybe they're not quite old enough yet to grapple with some of the other stuff and get experience, but I think that'll be what ends up moving forward.
And so Nemesis, like I know that Mithy's currently your coach at the moment for Fnatic. Has that helped for, you know, he's had such a huge career for such a long time and had only been up until very recently a pro player as well. Like, has it helped to have him there and with all of that knowledge that he already has and also having proven himself as a pro player beforehand? Does that affect you as a player?
The main difference between like, let's say Mithy and normal coaches, that you can really feel the impact or like the difference that Mithy was a pro player before and other coaches weren't, because Mithy like understands because he's been a pro player, he understands what what are the things that we go through and how do we feel in a lot of situations, because he's been there himself, and how the game changes and stuff. He's been used to this. But back to the coaching topic, I also want to say that coaching is like very in like let's say middle teams or whatever, it's very like generalized. The reviews and how they go, they only point out like these obvious things such as you should have moved there, you should have moved there. But the difference between like top 1 or top 2 team and like the rest of the teams is like these small things, and this is how good players, you make difference between good players and bad players. And basically I forgot what I was gonna say.
Okay, let me compound onto what he's saying, because I think I know what he's saying, but he's not articulating it really well. Generally, in bottom tier and middle of the pack teams, what ends up happening inside of reviews with coaches is that they only point out the obvious, something that a challenger player or a master tier player or another grandmaster player in the room could have pointed out as well, right? Yeah. The problem is that most coaches cannot then tell a professional player, you fucked up here via your intent or your mechanical execution, right? They can't go to the nitty-gritty, the super small foundation of what is creating the mistakes, nor can they actually spot a mistake before it happens and see the build-up to it. Sort of like seeing, you know, like you see the direction that a car is going, you know that it's going to crash. They can't see that the car crash is going to happen before it does.
Yeah, okay.
And so they can't help prevent it or coach in a way that they can prevent it without waiting for the crash to happen and then going, oh, Captain Hindsight. And then, so because of that, what ends up happening is the struggle is constantly just trying to get to middle of the pack. But the difference between a middle of the pack team and a top team like Cloud9 or Fnatic or G2 or something in Western regions is that the players are doing so many things better on such a small level that isn't as obvious. And it's really, really hard to spot out and discern, but then also guide middle tier players to that level. If you don't have the wherewithal to spot it, recognize it, and then also know how to train it.
Yeah, so it's about diagnosis is what you're saying.
Right,
rather than anything else.
Yeah.
Which is actually really interesting, because I was half expecting you to, instead of talking about sort of the micro details, right? Because everyone knows where they fucked up. And if you review your own VOD, you'll see like, oh, I screwed this bit up here, like I shouldn't have done that, etc., etc. But I think a lot of like what I was half expecting was you to talk about like the holistic strategy behind the team, right? Because there's been a lot of question marks that you've had all year long, right? About like drafting issues, things like that, right. Itemization issues, like very high level type stuff. That's more like
right.
overarching and sort of showing that like we haven't actually been trying to push the envelope forward as far as strategy is concerned. Yes. Like, is that what comes afterwards, or?
So players are so concerned with the mistakes that they're making in the there and now, but also if a player isn't cognizant of these things, like Morello Leandri, right? The argument there. Well, it's not even Morello Leandri, it's like Leandri versus Oblivion or versus the upgrade, sort of a thing, right? Yeah. Just for clarity. Stuff like this isn't even being discussed yet. And the reason that stuff like that can't be discussed is because everyone is so preoccupied with fixing the glaringly obvious problems. And yet glaringly obvious problems like Rift Herald rotation are still commonly misunderstood. Like no one apparently, like when we're watching in the LCK, Atlus, you and I, or me and Valdez, whatever, you know, I'll watch a team rotate to Herald and be like, what the fuck are they doing? Like, they just gave up 3 waves bot, which is worth more than the Herald gold and the plate gold, and then they give up 2 turret plates, and I'm like, does anyone, like, freeze the VOD and be like, actually, this is just a math equation. It doesn't make any sense. And apparently the answer is no, because then when you listen to player interviews, or you get to listen in on, like, mic checks, or, like, you see players talk on streams and stuff, they're like, oh, we messed up the Herald fight, or, oh, we should have not have done this, and it's like, problem starts 2 minutes earlier than that, and no one's talking about it. And
I mean, we've got a player right here, like Nemesis. Do you have conversations with other players about this, like this sort of thing in particular, or you just don't care because you're busy in mid lane? Or
no, of course. I think we have a lot of conversations here in Fnatic. We have a lot of players that are passionate about the game and stuff, and we research a lot of things and think about a lot of things. Obviously, there comes times where there are disagreements, right? And then I think the most difficult part between like pro teams is getting to a point where you agree that someone is right and someone is wrong, because usually the argument is only between the 2 players, right? And if no one chimes in and actually proves it via different ways or whatever, then it's hard to just, one will go, yeah, I'm right, and the other one will go, yeah, I'm right, and then you don't get anywhere, right? Yeah.
And so you sort of need a mediator, or at least someone that can come in with some sort of authority to say like, hey, this is this. And then it goes all the way back around to the initial point of having a coach who is respected enough in his play to be able to diagnose. Oh my god, it all comes full circle.
It all comes full circle.
I mean, I don't even care if it's another player, but someone has to do it, I guess.
Well, sure, but generally most pro players, and we've seen this a lot from like streams and mic checks and videos that teams release from behind the scenes, most pro players don't know anything about each other's roles.
That is true to often it's true, I think.
I think that's actually that's really hard, right? Because so many players specialize so completely and play thousands and thousands of games in a certain role that it's almost hard to fathom having to put that amount of time into 4 others as well in order to have a conversation. Like, it does get a little bit rough, because you can't exactly like tell your mid laner to, well, if you want to argue with our support, then you can just go off for 3 weeks and play nothing but support, and then you can have that conversation, And I guess I chose the wrong 2 roles because going from mid to support isn't too hard, but still.
Interestingly enough, it feels like mid can argue really easily with almost every role except for jungle. And I feel like that's something
I actually realized that I had like the worst possible example.
yeah. We should have used jungle in something, but it feels like mid, because of the nature of the role and the champion pool that mid laners are required to have, feels like mid laners can actually argue and entertain with top AD and support way more than any other role ever can with anything else. And the only thing that is still a little bit of a gap is jungle, because I feel like jungle is really weird, where people don't get what's actually happening.
Yeah, and jungle also changes every year, right? So you have to be on spot to those changes.
Yeah. So well, it is a little bit rough to have like everyone on like a decent level. Nemesis, I believe one of your former IDs. Were you a Clearlove fan? Like, or was that just like a meme? Like, what was...
No, that's actually... A lot of people obviously don't know it, but that's actually a name that a ex-Slovenian player that used to be high elo and had team offers and stuff used. So I'm using that name in honor of him. But no, I'm not a Clearlove fanboy.
I was like, well, maybe he like was a former jungler actually before all of this started. So he might be the complete package player that has all of the skills.
Definitely not. I actually mained every role but jungle. So. Well,
I mean, that's it's only further proving your point, Mr. LS.
PayPal?
Absolutely nailed it.
PayPal?
That's another 10. We can do another analysis. Oh my god. So Nemesis, have you been watching any of the LCK at all over the year? I know it's hard to, with scrims and all that sort of stuff to also watch some games, but
yeah, so honestly it's not hard to watch. It's just, do I have the motivation and do I think it's good for me to watch those games? And I would say this year, for example, in majority of cases, I would say it's not worth to watch. I usually watch SK T1's games mostly.
Yep.
Saved.
Nailed it.
Saved.
I think they're still my favorite team there. And they're probably my favorite team to watch. But yeah.
Outside of that, haven't really seen anyone worth looking at?
No, I do sometimes watch certain players and stuff on teams, but not like the whole team itself, right? And also, there's a lot of things that I disagree with, how the game should be played. So I just kind of don't want to watch it.
Yeah, the whole give you a headache because they keep making the mistakes that you definitely don't want to see. I completely understand that. We've watched the majority of the games throughout this year, so we can completely understand.
When you pick Renekton.
Oh god, don't even. Thankfully, at least we can speak our minds about it while we're doing it. We've got like some sort of megaphone to have that discussion, and maybe it'll get out there. But it has been certainly an interesting year when it comes to the skill level of certain teams, or not even necessarily skill level, because I think that all of our players are mechanically good, but some of the decisions that have been made this year in the draft and then moving into even map rotations have just been super strange. Outside of T1, of course, who have just been winning.
I think Korean players in general are very talented mechanically. Like I watch a lot of just solo queue players, one chicks or whatever I've never heard before, and their mechanics are insane, really. But the other things probably need some improvement, in my opinion.
And I actually find it really interesting and almost ironic that we're talking about sort of T1 being the one relevant team. But if you look at Coach Kim, like he's one of the examples of a coach who is a coach, right? And not a coach who is a player. But this guy he's taken multiple teams to Worlds. He's transformed teams from, a challenger team like Damwon, for example, and then moved them all the way to the World Championship. He won Worlds in 2018. Like there must be something that this guy is good at, right? But it's not on the level of like grappling with the players and stuff like that. And so maybe he's like the other side of the coin, where he's just that really good mediator. I know, LS, you were talking to Bwipo about this, and he was actually pretty adamant about the whole needing a coach that can facilitate conversation between the players rather than a coach that can tell the players what to do. Yeah. Do you sort of I think Coach Kim might be that sort of example.
I think both are important. Like when I talked with Hotshot GG, I said that both are necessary. Or like the academy idea that I want to open up, which interestingly enough, a lot of people reached out to me about. And when I say a lot of people, I mean like investors. Interestingly enough, like one of my ideas for that was to have a actual like therapist or psychologist that would be present basically at the academy for mental health purposes. I think that there's a lot of things within teams that are lacking, and I think that like life coaching or like personality management coaching, which I think is entirely different from strategical coaching, is absolutely necessary within teams. Once you get to certain stages, because there's so many limited things that just a strategic coach can do unless they come with a bigger package. Whether it be through enormous, wealth of experience or whatnot. But yeah, I think that staffs should have variety on them.
Yeah, so it's about having like very specialized people, not just one guy that can do everything.
Yeah.
For example. So like you don't necessarily need to have the entire staff on the stage with you when you're drafting. You have like a drafting coach that's just really good at that. They understand what their players are capable of, and then they can use that to make the best draft possible for the meta that's currently standing. And then you have like all of this plethora of other people out the back. Is that something that Fnatic sort of does as well already, Nemesis?
No, I think right now we're more on a game focused coaching, not like auto game focused coaching. So yeah, that's kind of in direction we're right now, I would say.
Okay, so it's more like focus on what's happening in that game at the time, or like focus on like what the mistakes that have been made in this game over here, and then you have that discussion afterwards. Is that sort of what you mean?
Yeah.
And without like having the extra therapy, etc.
Yeah, basically we don't do stuff that are outside the game that much. We do some things, but not, I would say, as much as other teams maybe. Such as, I don't know, having people that tell you to go to gym or something like that,
Oh, so you don't have that over there? I know there was a big push for that. What was it, like 2 years ago or something like that?
Yeah.
Everyone started hitting the gym. It was just insane.
No, in Fnatic, players have the freedom to basically kind of do what they want to. For example, in the past, I worked with some sports psychologists and stuff, but I personally really felt like they were just not, because they come from other areas, not from esports. That I felt like they just didn't know how to approach the whole esports thing. Yeah.
And actually, maybe that's part of the problem, right? Maybe there's just not enough people that are trained in order to do things in esports, right? Because actually, going back to the coaching thing, right? Like I think some of the greatest coach examples in other sports are coaches that couldn't play the game if you even asked them to. They'd break their knees, because they're older. Things like that, like famous basketball coaches and football coaches and things like that. They're all about strategy. They're not about like being able to run out onto the pitch and actually, throw a ball around or something like that. Like, I think that there is expectations that maybe need to be different or just are different and need to be recognized in esports instead, or something like that. Like, I feel like there is like this stigma of we need to prove that esports is sports, when actually we should probably just let esports be esports and treat it as such. There was something that LS brought up, I believe, when we were discussing this show beforehand, and talk about inviting you on, Nemesis. And it was about like how you practice. And he said that it might be different to how other pro players do it. Like you often like go into proviews and actually like look at exactly what other players are doing with their mouse, things like that. And instead of like studying a build and then practicing or something like that, you like to dissect what other people are doing in certain instances. Like is that true? Like what's your mindset on practice?
So first of all, the first thing is probably the hours I spent. I think it's basically every day, I don't know, 15 hours, let's say.
My
so
God.
it's a lot of hours. Yeah, and I've been
Yeah.
doing this for a long time, and I've been playing this game for 10 years or now or something like that, very similar. So it's been a long time, right? And then yes, I focus more on like maybe this very small things that differentiate the pro players, the good ones and the bad ones. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Okay.
word.
Okay.
Proview is a good example, right? For example, when Proview came out, I was the one of the players that actually said it's bad for the scene, because I thought that, I mean, I have the opinion that basically good players lose out on this and the bad players gain from this, and I didn't like that myself. But I learned, for example, a lot from players like Faker, because when Faker started streaming on Twitch, I think, for example, learning from a player's personal view is way better than just opening on League client and spectating a game.
Right.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, absolutely.
I watch pretty much every stream of his. I watch some games even like 5 times just to understand everything he does. Obviously, some things are random because it's solo queue, and you can't always. And then other things like champion research is very important to me. Like there are hidden champions every patch that no one pulls out or no one like even thinks about them, and they might just legit change up the whole meta, right? And I try to focus on that a lot too, for example.
Wow. And do you know of anybody else who does this as well, or is this like just the way that you think works for you?
I'm sure there are players who do that stuff as well, or maybe in some different ways. Maybe they do some other things that I don't do. But I need to probably see that before I can say, I guess. Obviously, I'm not going to say what my teammates do. I feel like that's something I shouldn't be saying.
Okay. You can keep that under wraps. That's absolutely fine. We won't press you on absolutely every topic. Apart from, maybe asking you when you're going to go to NA like all of the other good European mid laners. When's that happening? Have you got a trip planned?
Yeah, no thanks.
All right, he'll pass on that one. But LS said that you might come and visit us in Korea. I did find out from LS though that you weren't one of the players that was in on, even like back in the day, really cared about the Korean solo queue boot camp type situation, like prior to Worlds, prior to things like that. What's your thought on the whole boot camping situation?
I think the best thing that you get from boot camping is the pink. I think the other things, I don't know how to feel about them. I'm not as hyped on them as maybe some other pro players. That's why I never like even flew there or something myself. And I never came to a situation where we had boot camp yet, right? But I watch a lot of like streams, a lot of games from Korea, like on YouTube, Twitch, whatever, and I don't know. I'm not like on the highest chain that Korea solo queue is so good and stuff from the things that I see. But yeah, I think the pink would be just the best thing.
It is pretty good. The internet just in general, pretty good. Plus we've got great food. So, whenever you want to come over, just to be honest, I'm not actually concerned about the solo queue or anything like that. It'd just be cool to hang out and grab a drink.
I would love to, yeah.
The delay was my all-time favorite part. Absolutely brilliant.
Oh my
Doesn't
God.
need to come for the solo queue, but maybe he'll come to just hang out, and that's the main thing. So I want to move over to more of like a power level type discussion, because I'd like to get your opinion as a European player. Where do you think the regions stack up at the moment as far as power levels based on what we've seen?
It's really hard for me to say. Like, I think there's like 2 teams good from Europe and 1 to 2 teams good from Korea, and then I don't know how to feel about China. There are some good parts about them, but there are some parts that I'm not convinced yet. And there's Cloud9 from NA. That's good.
Sort of the only relevant ones. If
Captain
I could
Obvious
ask a
over
more
here.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
So out of curiosity, if there was going to be a second Korean team, which one would it be? Would it be Gen G because they were in the final, or would it be a different team?
I think I would say Gen G, yeah.
We'll just have to see how they do at the LPL versus LCK mid-season cup, which is going to be coming up at the end of May.
The mid-season cup is top 4 Korea, right?
Yep, top 4 Korea, top 4 China,
so-
which is actually really scary for us because the top 4 in China are more of a top 4 rather than us having a top 1 and then some other teams.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Europe's not doing anything, right? Or they can't.
No.
Yeah, Europe's not. Okay. GG.
You could have like a mini LEC, but I just don't think you can't do like a Rift Rivals thing, right? Because of like ping differences, I guess,
Yeah.
unless you agree to play
They
it on
could-
200 ping.
They could only do something against Russia League, I guess. Right? That would
mean,
be
that-
the only option.
It's not bad over there. Not bad,
Well-
League of Legends.
Yeah, North America does what? They play against LATAM, I guess.
Yeah,
I guess that
Brazil
would
at
be
a
the only-
stretch, maybe.
Yeah, the ping's too bad, I think. I think
Yeah,
it's too bad, the ping. So I think LATAM would probably be the most likely. But obviously OC just gets thrown to the
Shafted.
wolves.
I mean-
so, yeah.
we are on the other side of the world from basically everyone, so OCE is a difficult one.
Some would say it doesn't exist. You know?
Well,
Flat Earth.
if you haven't been there, theoretically
Flat
it
Earth.
doesn't exist in your brain,
it's
does
not
it?
even real. Okay.
Mhm. I wonder where I came from. I was spawned. I was groomed.
Yeah.
I'm actually just a member
No,
of
no, no,
Alice's
no.
chat.
Welcome.
I was
Welcome to the
groomed
club.
over here.
Jesus. It's all over. It's actually just all over. I hope Ian doesn't get the reference. He just leaves it right in.
I hope it's just like us getting like fake beards put on or something like that, and that's what his idea of grooming means.
It's pretty good.
My cat did just jump up on my computer, by the way, but he
Okay.
didn't turn it off this time, so we've nailed it. I was actually very scared for a second there. If you saw the terror in my eyes, that is exactly why. I was going to ask you some questions about the Annie buffs, but I think they're irrelevant, so I don't think we need to worry about
On the
that one.
PBE? No, that's not irrelevant at all.
It's not irrelevant? You think
No,
that
so-
they're good enough?
So if Annie's doing it right, so the PBE buffs, if Annie's doing it right, she stuns you, right?
Mhm.
So Tibbers will stun you. So immediately on cast, Tibbers is gonna get like one application of his buff.
Oh,
right?
right. And so the tick damage buff
So-
is going to be amplified.
Right, because you're stunned. So then Tibbers
Yeah,
is gonna
true.
follow you for like 3 to 4 ticks, which is a really big deal. I don't think Riot has ever buffed the ultimate of a champion as much as they're buffing Annie. It's like this is like one of those really out there buffs that Riot's going for. It's like they're doing the Twisted Fate, the blue card buff where they just buffed it exorbitantly, right, with blue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except they're doing it on her ultimate, and it's really strange because her lethal range getting so much. She effectively is gaining ignite in laning phase now, without having to need it. Right, a level 5 ignite. How much damage does that do? Isn't it 150 in true? Wait, coach. By the way,
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but
hold on, coach. By the way, wait. I think it's 150 true damage, level 5.
I am.
I'm a bit of a coach. I'm a bit of a coach.
Did
right
you
now,
nail
okay?
it?
Yeah, I did. So it's
I'm
Damn.
trying to
150 true
find.
damage.
Where is it? I'm trying to find the changes.
Just search PBE Annie.
Yeah, I'm trying.
PBE 1010 lol. Where's this? Yeah, bione.gg. Is this a Korean site? Yeah, bione.gg. Annie aura damage 10 to 20 plus 10% AP to 20 to 40 plus 20% AP. So you figure the first time Annie is going to cast her aura on you, she's going to have roughly almost 100 AP, right? Because she's going to come off of a recall. So she's going to have almost 100 AP. So she's going to get 10 damage from that. But the instant aura damage is going to be 10. But then the aura is going to tick on you a couple of times because you're stunned. Or Tibbers is just moving faster than you. She's getting a shitload of damage. For what reason? She's getting Ignite. She must be getting Ignite.
I don't
It's
know.
pretty good for a champ like her. I mean, I think she can be picked in some sort of spots against like melee champs, I would say. And also, I think the itemization can work with her right now. I think she's one of the champions that just buys HP items such as Proto Build, I would say, and just keeps the mana item because I don't think she needs it really. And then she gets like these core items really fast. I think Liandris is also, a very good item on her.
PayPal.
Well, anyone with any sort of dot or ticking damage, pretty good with Leandri. So I think that you're never going to lose an argument there. So all right. So maybe the Annie question was far more relevant than I expected, because
I'm gonna sell a lot of patron tier lists. I'll tell you what.
I mean, I thought they were buffing her E. Which,
They did buff her E too.
Yeah.
He's already been buffed, right, with the movement.
They
speed?
gave
Yeah.
her rank 3 E at rank 1 now, and it
I thought-
scales up. Yeah.
I thought they're gonna buff it again, and so I was thinking is some sort of tank version of Annie could come out with that amount of damage reduction, but I guess now they're going to R instead of E.
I still don't think it's good enough for pro play, but I don't know. That's a lot of damage though, late game.
We'll see what I can do. We'll see.
Yeah.
There we go. Nemesis never going to let us down. Absolutely perfect. So yeah, I think that's probably going to bring us to about the end of the Pog State for this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Thanks once again to Nemesis for coming on the show. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks also to you, LS. Of course, make sure that you follow the Pog State on Twitter, which is just at Pog State. I'm at Atlus TV. This is at LSXYZ9. And I believe, are you Fnatic Nemesis at the moment on Twitter?
I think he's
Nemesis?
lol_Nemesis.
LOL_Nemesis on Twitter. I should have done my research before
Wait,
this.
wait. He's Nemesis_lol.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
He doesn't even
Nemesis
know,
_lol.
Yeah.
And now there's going to be like some random dude who's like lol_Nemesis that is now
there
like getting all of
actually
these
is, yeah.
followers. Oh my god. Absolutely. He must have been so happy when you joined Fnatic, the lol_Nemesis guy. Oh man. Just killing
Just go to his profile. It's the weirdest thing in the world.
What?
Wait, oh my god, I don't even want to. I'm actually frightened.
Just man, I don't know. This guy, he's got something going on.
All right. While he's doing that, make sure you hop over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. 5 stars would be fantastic. Even if you hated it, just leave us a review saying that you hated it. Just give it 5 stars. That's all you need to do. We need to get to new and noteworthy and all that sort of stuff. And that's the plan. I'm being attacked by a cat. You can also catch the Pog State on Spotify, Stitcher, Buzzsprout, Google, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio. And of course, it is here on YouTube if that is where you are consuming it. I'm not a cat tower. This is just scuffing up this entire remote Pog State situation. But thank you so much, guys, for watching. In the next episode, we might have some very, very interesting guests from some pretty well-known organizations over here in Korea. So make sure you stay tuned for episode 9. It could certainly be a spicy one. That will also be on the eve of our mid-season cup, which will be the battle between LPL and LCK. So that's going to be super exciting at the end of May. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you for the next episode.